G'day guys and welcome back to another episode of the Bradley J. Driver Experience, the future #1 podcast in the world, we hope, and that's what we're working for. It is your host, Bradley J. Driver. I'm super excited for today. I'm going to announce our guest in a moment. But I just want to say, if you've been listening, whether this be the first or one of many that you've tuned into, thank you so much. It's you guys, the audience, that keeps this show alive and thriving. And you can continue to show your support by hitting the all-important follow or subscribe button, leaving a 5-star rating and a raving review on Apple Podcast app. It just helps us grow. We want you to share this with friends. The more people that are listening, the more we have a chance to inspire and change their lives positively. And I think that's what today is going to do. I've been excited for this episode. We booked it about a month ago. This is, I think, a very relevant topic at the current, but a topic that we're tackling a little differently to what we've ever done before on the podcast. I'm here with an exceptional woman. She's built an incredible business called Beautiful Minds, built it here in Australia, taken it to the US, and it's all about tackling mental fitness in our youth and adolescence, building resilience and building the right headspace to move into adulthood and take on life and just get everything out of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with the amazing Marina Passalaris.
Woohoo! And you got the surname right. Well
I studied. I've done some research because I always find I go into these and I love to know people's pronunciation of their names correctly.
Well, that is a first. I've done that many radio interviews where people never get it right. So well done you.
I appreciate it.
Everyone leave them a 5-star review. Yeah. Okay, good.
I'm a driver, so everyone goes Dryberg.
Yeah.
They always mess my last name up, so I've always appreciated someone who knows the pronunciation.
Knows how to say it.
Exactly.
There you go.
It's incredible to be here. We're here in your home. I want to thank you for inviting us here to do this in person. As we spoke about, it's always nice to sit face to face, build that connection. And we've just had a great chat for the last 20 minutes and got to know each other a little bit. And I'm excited for this because, one thing that I take a lot of pride in with this show and with this podcast is the ability to have really powerful conversations. And I've always said that the motto for this is conversation is powerful and it can change your life. And I know there'll be a lot of parents, a lot of childcare workers that are listening into this today and just hoping to write down a heap of tips and notes.
Great.
But also people who are maybe in those stages of their life where maybe, I know there are a few teens that listen to this, but also a lot of adults who will still take something really powerful from this. Explain to the audience a little bit what you've built with Beautiful Minds, and I want to, elaborate on that a little bit more and go into what inspired and motivated action to build that business.
So I started Beautiful Minds almost 17 years ago, and it was really the intention was never to build it as a business. It was, for me, a huge need in the market that wasn't there. So you can imagine 17 years ago, there was no headspace. There was no organizations going into schools and having these conversations. And at the time, I was working for a really well-known modeling agency, and we were having all these young people coming in, and we were, sending them out for photo shoots and jobs, but no one was having the conversation around mental health. How were they handling things? And at the time, I was really young. So as a young model booker, what I was exposed to was all these predominantly girls at the time coming to me and talking about the fact that they had an eating disorder, that they were self-harming, that they got to a casting and they had a major panic attack. And, I suffered severely with anxiety when I was younger. And so for a really long time, I sat with this concept of why are we not talking about how we're feeling internally? And I went to the modeling agency owner and I said, look, I've got this amazing idea. What we're going to do is we're going to create this really cool product, and it's going to be a workshop that our people can come to, all of our models can come to. They can get completely equipped with life skills, confidence, really supported in terms of how to deal with overwhelm, how to feel motivated. And then we can send them out for castings, and they're going to be so much more equipped and much better much better talent for us. And the agency owner turned around and just said, look, I'm really actually not that interested in how they feel internally. They just need to be beautiful and they just need to do what they're doing. Okay. So I think the concept of mental health, the concept of really understanding how you're feeling in order to make great change in your life was just so foreign 17 years ago. So I was up against a lot when I started. Schools were absolutely not interested in having us in their environment, because for them it was just about the marks the kids were getting and were they attending or were they not attending. And there wasn't yet that clarity around the fact that there was this really direct correlation between mental health and whether kids were succeeding in school. And so I just started small. I started with some weekend and school holiday workshops. And a girlfriend of mine at the time was working for a really big Brisbane newspaper, because at the time I was living in Brizzy. And she did a big media story on the launch of Beautiful Minds. And I mean, I wasn't prepared. I had no logo, no website. I hadn't done a business plan. I just kind of thought about it and started writing down some ideas. And she directed them to my home phone number, and the phone rang completely. I think for 2 weeks I was just inundated, just getting back to people.
How does that feel?
I knew that there was a need. And I think for me at the time, it was never, for probably the first 3 or 4 years, it was never the plan that it was going to evolve into the enormous business that it is today. It was really just about, I wanted to serve people and I wanted to give back to my community. And I wanted to have conversations that we weren't having. And so that was the only thing that I was focused on. I was working 2-3 jobs at the time just to kind of, keep the food on the table and pay rent. Yeah. And you have to do it, right?
Yeah, you do.
And
you're also, I can imagine now, very proud looking back and understanding. I think it proves purpose. If you know you're doing what's right, you do whatever you have to do to make sure it survives.
Listen, when you work in a yogurt factory and you get up at 3 a.m. to go and manually pipe yogurt, which is what I did for many years. I worked in the factory from 4 a.m. until 8 a.m., would come home, shower, and then be in the office, and I'm putting that in inverted commas because it was a spare room, and then work from 9 until 5, and you do that 6 or 7 days a week. You do what you have to do in order to get where you need to go, because you've got a passion.
I love that. I love hearing that, because I'm in that journey right now. So I connect really well to that. I want to go back to what you just said in your opening there and explaining to us how this all began. It's funny, I had a conversation, I can't remember what number episode it was now, but with a very good friend of mine, Kira Jones, who is an internationally signed model. She's over in London at the moment. And in her episode, we spoke about this notion of it is such an image-driven business, of course. But her thing was, I'm more than the face in the photo. I'm more than just the girl that has to rock up to the shoots or the castings and get the job and market the product. There is a mind here. There is an internal being that I want to support, and I want to make sure I'm healthy internally too. And we really had a speak and a conversation, I should say, about those struggles. And I think it's just incredible to see you pick that up so early on in the piece and build something from it. Then hearing you speak about the schools, and I guess I'll see what you think about this, but my thought process is, in a time now where we're a little bit more comfortable, we're definitely addressing the conversation as much as we can around mental fitness and mental health. Do you think back then the notion was, if we don't address it, maybe it's not here?
It doesn't belong. Yeah, it doesn't belong in our school. Yeah,
if we introduce it, maybe it exposes itself.
And there's still schools that don't want to really address it. And I think the biggest problem, one of the things that I fought really hard with, and I've been into Parliament House trying to fight this, and we're still not getting anywhere, is that mental health, mental fitness, whatever you want to call it, needs to be standardized across the board. You cannot send in, which is what's happening at the moment, 150 different organisations or guest speakers that are all giving really fluffy content to our children. We need to take the work that we do in this space really seriously and standardise it with the best quality people in the world to deliver that content into schools. Because what's happening at the moment is schools are addressing it, but there's no quality control. So schools could get in a mental health speaker who's just got a personal experience, which is great from a storytelling point of view. But where are the tools? Where are the strategies? Where do the kids go after they've heard that story to be able to make improvements in their own world? And so I went into Parliament House last year and I spoke to Dan Tien and I spoke to a couple of our other politicians, and I just said, maths and English and history are standardised. Mental health needs to be standardised across the board.
I agree.
And we're not there yet. And so for me, it's a huge frustration because I think that the school system is broken badly.
I love that you said that. It's something I've spoken about at length with a lot of my close friends and a lot of these guests. we're a little bit old school. We haven't, it's one of those things in our society, so much has changed, yet the system that creates these kids early on and is so influential to the children at school hasn't changed. It hasn't adapted for the times we're in and the way that the world's moving. And as you were saying, talking about those standardized subjects, I was sitting and thinking, as someone who loved sport and still does, physical health was a standard weekly and, topical subject, as well as physically in the way you studied it. But there's nothing about mental health.
No, and so you're encouraged to stay healthy because you do sports, but where is the mind health? Where does that component fit in? And I just think, I think that the school system's very much like a factory. You clock in and you clock out, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, and we're not seeing an improvement. We've got the Australian government funding millions and millions of dollars towards organisations, for mental health, but yet we've never had higher suicide rates. So that tells you that something's not working. If you look at a business, if I were to look at Beautiful Minds and I was putting millions of dollars into Beautiful Minds, but we weren't getting the results, I would say that something's broken within Beautiful Minds and needs to be fixed. And we're not looking at it in the same way. And that for me is very frustrating. And it just makes us work even harder with what we're doing at Beautiful Minds to be able to try and support as many kids as possible, because we just don't feel that they're getting adequate support when they're going to school.
How do you think that starts? Where does the conversation begin? And I know, if I've done my research correctly, Beautiful Minds specifically works with kids between the age of 8 and 17.
Correct, yes.
Is that an age you've identified as, I guess, understanding a little bit of what's happening here, but also being able to take in that information and start to apply it to their lives?
Look, it's really interesting. We've got an amazing global team of experts that we've just started working with, and it's everyone from Stanford University to Harvard to the world's leading neuroscientist, Dr. Andrew Huberman, to the world's leading trauma expert, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and they're all working with us at the moment. And, we've identified as a group that actually between the ages of 7 and 11 is when a young person really gets the tools to be able to have what we call a success identity. And if they are, if they're not really well grounded and they don't have the tools and they don't feel secure by the age of 11, you'll start to see some really big problems as they move into adolescence.
Yeah.
And so we're actually starting to make our workshops slightly younger from next year. So we are starting to support the 7-year-olds as well. But I think the earlier that we can, start with this information, if you can teach a 3 and 4-year-old to just sit and breathe, they don't understand the concept of meditation and mindfulness, but it's just getting some daily rituals into their world so they feel calmer.
Definitely. I'm a massive Gary Vee fan.
Oh, yeah. Love Gary.
I was hearing a lot about what you're saying there, and one thing he says a lot, and I really hear it because I grew up, like we spoke about before, in a really supportive, just amazing family. Building self-esteem at such a young age, I laugh and quite often I hear him talk about how he thought at the age of 15 he was the best looking, smartest guy at school because his mum told him that every day.
Yeah.
Well, every time I post a photo on IG, Mum tells me I'm beautiful. She tells me I'm the best looking bloke in Wollongong.
I love it.
But it's that self-esteem that you build around, the relationship with your dad and your mum and your siblings at home, but also your friends at school. And you probably spend more time with the friends at school and the people in that environment than you do with the people at home, just because of the way our system works. And I guess we're now seeing those issues expose themselves. And you said the rate of suicide has increased with all the spending. I think
the highest it's ever been.
We've seen now, mental health kills people younger than any physical health issues do in the most cases. And, that's why I'm loving what you're doing. And it's amazing to hear that the business has expanded to work with all of these professionals in fields that I probably wouldn't be able to wrap my head around. But talk to me about the way the business has grown. Starts here in Australia. Have you always been here in New South Wales and Sydney?
No. So I started the business on the Sunshine Coast, and it was a hobby. So I was kind of bouncing between the sunny coast and Brisbane. And then I had a wild idea for a really big event that I wanted to host, where I wanted to have 1,000 teenagers into a kind of big conference room, and have rock bands and makeup bars and gift bags and celebrities come and actually share their stories. And this was probably about 9 or 10 years ago that I had this vision for this day that I wanted to create. And the day was called BU Day. And so I rang the editor of Girlfriend magazine, and it was still an in-print magazine at the time. And I said, look, I've got this fab idea, and I want to create this huge event. And no one was doing those kind of cool events for teens.
Yeah.
And no one was thinking about pairing up celebrities with mental health and actually getting them to talk. 10 years ago, we just weren't doing that. Instagram hadn't started, I don't even know if Facebook had started. And so she just said to me, look, I love the idea. We would love to partner with you, but you have to be living in Sydney to do it, because that's where we would want to host it. And so at the time, it's funny how the world sort of works. I just kind of come out of a long-term relationship, and I just had this opportunity to move to Sydney, and I'd never ever in my wildest dreams ever thought that I would live in Sydney. I'm a country girl at heart. I love smaller places. Yeah. But I made the move for the business, and I came here. I didn't know a single person. We didn't have an office here. We had no staff here whatsoever. The business was very much still in what I would define as very early stages. And I moved here, and I, kept doing the Beautiful Minds workshops in the school holidays, started BU Day with Girlfriend magazine, and it just grew and grew. And the last year that we had it, we had 1,200 young people attend, which was pretty big. And, it's just now today we've got 85 presenters that work for Beautiful Minds. We've got a team of 15 full-time staff. Everyone's working from home at the moment, which I think everyone's loving. And we've opened up a non-for-profit in the US. So the plan for next year is we are launching something super exciting, which will be global and which will be digital and will be unlike anything anyone's seen before. I'm very excited about it.
I'm excited to hear that. I did see that you'd expanded, and you had been spending a bit of time in the US, yeah?
A lot of time in the US. I love LA. I love the States. I think there's a really positive energy that comes with that place. So we do get over there quite a lot, and a lot of our global experts are based over there. So we've been working really closely with a guy called Fred Fuchs, who came through my partner Brendan Radmakers. Used to work for Warner Brothers. He was a brilliant producer and screenwriter. He went to Stanford University, so he spent many years living in LA. And he became really good friends with a guy called Fred Fuchs, and Fred created all the Godfather movies, which was super well known. And he worked with George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and is just a well-known producer in the States. And he's won 11 Academy Awards for his work. And so we're working with Fred at the moment to create this digital platform to make it really amazing and really just fantasy, something that kids want to engage in. They don't want to feel like mental health is a drag. School doesn't work for so many of them. So how do we make it so exceptional for them that they want to engage?
I love that you said that, because I think that's what, my sister's a great example, right? When she hates going to the doctors because it just looks all a bit scary, right? She's like, I feel like I'm rocking up. They're going to give me a needle of some sort. It's just a scary environment. And I think for kids to be confronted with, firstly, their own feelings and not really understand what's happening within their headspace, but then for it to be treated so clinically sometimes, it's really hard for them to take on board everything that's happening. And in a world where, our phones are literally in our pockets non-stop, they're always there, and digital media is in front of our face with social media, music, television, movies, which is all so accessible now with Netflix and these streaming services. I was actually interested listening to you just then touch on your husband's experience at Warner Brothers, and he's come into the business, the digital side of things. With this shift, have you guys spoken about the way that modern day TV, music, like if we're getting into, say, these schools and affecting children at such an early age now, do you think that will really inspire the next generation to, in their creative pursuits, tackle these issues within music, within pop culture?
Look, absolutely. I don't think the education system of Australia is not ready to revamp, and they won't be ready probably ever, right? They're going to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's up to organisations that have got a really forward way of thinking, and a way to engage with young people. Because let's face it, if you want to take the stigma out of mental health, you have to stop making it look, as you said, clinical. So if you want to embed these daily tools into a young person's life, they've got to love interacting with the brand. They've got to love interacting with the way that you do things. And it's the reason why our retreats are so popular. We'll take young people. So say, for example, we take our teen girls to Byron Bay, and they are completely immersed in nature. They don't have their phones on them. They are doing their friendship sessions in a beautiful teepee. There's fire breathers and belly dancing and all sorts of experiences that they get to be a part of. And through those experiences, we teach them what they need to know. And so I've always been a big believer in give someone what they want, and then through that, give them what they need. Yeah.
I love that.
So create experiences for people, and through experiences, people will come. They will want to engage. And so one of the things that we strive to do at Beautiful Minds is have experiences. When we teach a young girl who's 7 or 8 how to be mindful and to sit peacefully, we do a flower crown. That's how we teach them.
Okay.
When we teach them confidence and having conversations with new people, we do that with circus performers through music therapy and hula hooping. So everything has got a little bit of a fantasy element to it, so that it's magical and that people walk away feeling like they've had such a special experience with us, but the learnings have been embedded.
That's really interesting to hear. I think we are so stimulated in this modern era that we need something to do all the time. It's really hard. Personally, I find it really hard to sit still. My meditation is like going for a long run.
Perfect.
Where I just get my time to myself, but I'm being stimulated through exercise.
Yeah.
I think I love that idea because it's also people touch back on experiences. They find things they love, and it becomes their anchors in everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested to hear, as someone who is, working with children and building these programs for kids, how do you then transfer? Is a lot of this just transferable into your own life?
Absolutely. In order to give someone what we call that success identity, they've got to have rituals and tools that they do every day. So we're big believers in the fact that you brush your teeth twice a day, hopefully. You eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. You go to sleep every single night at hopefully the same time or roughly the same time. Those things that we just do without even thinking because we've been taught from a very young age, we should then add in the additional things that we do. So perhaps we do the calm palm, which we teach at Beautiful Minds when you're feeling overwhelmed, that there should be some essential oils in your daily rituals, that you are going to bed and waking up at the same time, that you're eating healthy food, you're drinking lots of water. You have one day a week where you don't use your phone at all. You've got that digital detox, yeah? And so there's family time together where you sit and you ask each other questions. There's writing in your journal. There's lots of things that you can do. And it doesn't have to be hard work. For me, my biggest way of taking time out is going into my garden and cutting flowers.
And it's beautiful. So.
It's beautiful, yeah. But just going and being amongst nature. So there's things that you can do every single day from a self-care point of view that we're trying to educate our parents to implement into the home. So it just becomes second nature.
Can I ask, how hard is it to educate parents who have maybe grown up in a different time?
Yeah, sure.
And, because that's one thing I'm blessed. My parents had a life-shifting experience with the birth of myself and my health condition that really opened their mind to what they needed to do to support a kid with a chronic illness. And I think they flourished. They, I give them 10 out of 10s for everything. They've done so well with me and my younger sister. And I just think I look at some parents though, and maybe because that old school mentality of, toughen up, you'll be right. You chat less. There's less affection than there are these days. I was sitting with my nan and pop the other day, and they find it funny how, like, at the end of a grand final, all the boys are giving each other a big hug and a kiss. They're like, that never happened back in the day. Like, that's so different. Like, everyone's so comfortable with affection and showing compassion now. So how do you then go into that older generation or that generation of parents?
Great question.
And embed these ideas into their mind too?
I think, someone's got to be open to learning and open to change. And I think that comes through the social media messages that we send out, the newsletters, the parent nights that we offer at schools. We're doing an amazing parent evening in January with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, which is all around trauma. How do you find the signs that someone's going through trauma within the home, and how do you address it as a parent? And look, at the end of the day, you can't choose the family that are given to you. And so if you're in a situation where perhaps mum, dad, stepdad, carer is a certain way and they're not open to change, we have to take responsibility for ourselves at some stage in life where we go, how do we want to be? And what are the things that we want to bring into our world? And so, you may not be in a family where I wasn't in a family where we were taught how to deal with overwhelm and there was candles going and lavender oil, and I wasn't in that family. I just decided at a certain point when I was struggling with anxiety that I wanted that in my world, and I just kind of started adding that in. And for a lot of people it doesn't happen for a long time, but I think as human beings we give our power away too easily. And we actually forget that we're in control of who we are, and we're in control of how we choose to move through our day every single day. And when we get up in the morning and the very first thing we do is we look at our social media and we look at our phones, we're instantly handing over that power to everyone else's agenda in socials, right?
Yeah.
So choose to start your day in a certain way that supports you personally, and do little things throughout the day that makes your day amazing for you. It's not that hard.
I agree. You touched on there your anxiety growing up. You've obviously tackled that and handled it. And, a conversation we spoke about in some recent chats with guests was this idea of really conquering your own demons and owning up to what you've got to sort out yourself before you can help others. You truly got to help yourself before you help others. Do you think that sometimes parents are so loving and so protective of their children, they're trying to help their children before they maybe help themselves, and that's where that disconnect is?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And, there's always that... when people think about the airlines, when we were flying back before COVID, and they talk about the oxygen mask, fitting your own oxygen mask before you fit anyone else's. That's a really lovely way to remind yourself about how it works in life in general. You cannot, I think that's been my frustration with watching a lot of influencers on Instagram. They're out there every single day, intentionally good, trying to give advice and support other people, but yet they're not quite healed with their own journey. And I think there needs to be a really good mix of storytelling and story sharing, but it's got to be backed with clinical work. It's got to be backed with absolute facts and solid concrete foundation. And I think that's where we do pride ourselves at Beautiful Minds, as being very different to a lot of these organizations that are out there, is that we're not just sharing stories. We're also making incredible experiences, but we're working with the best people in the world to be able to ensure that when your child comes to us, they get the best content possible.
When I first announced that you were coming on the show, I had a local girl actually message me on Instagram, and she said she attended one of your workshops in her late teens and couldn't speak more highly of you. She said so many great things, and it was actually really nice for me heading into this to hear that experience wonderful. Firsthand from someone. But do you have to pinch yourself sometimes? Like, you've been working for children for 17 years now, and this business is obviously building and it's flourishing. I can't imagine just how much gratitude you have and how exciting this is to see this go to such a scale that now you help so many.
Do you know what I love? What is the most special part of this business is now being able to, because I'm still connected to a lot of students that started with me 16, 17 years ago. And what I love now is seeing these young people become parents, become doctors, become incredible members of the community and where their lives have gone. And I've had some really tough cases of kids that have come through the Beautiful Minds sessions over the years, and just seeing some of those kids come out of it in the best possible way, and how their lives have sort of flourished. And I think, yeah, I have gratitude every single day that I get to do this work, but I just feel like I'm only warming up. I think, you know, I'm in my 40s now, and I just feel a lot more grounded. I think Brendan and myself, you know, obviously being life partners, but also partners in business, we're stronger together. And so the business is just, he's added so much value to the business that I could never have brought to the business. And don't tell him that. I probably should be I probably should tell him that a lot more often. But no, he's wonderful. And so it's the team that we've got around us. And we do have some extraordinary stuff planned for 2021. So I'm itching to do more. Yeah. And I'm itching to get out to the whole world. And I think the time is right now. So it's exciting.
It's not only the founder, but the CEO of Beautiful Minds. Do you ever see a point in time where you step back and allow it to keep growing? Or do you think you'll always...
Control freak.
Because I think I can just see you as a person that will always be involved. And
I will.
And do you feel like that's because you're obviously so passionate about it, but you have such an anchor to wanting this to go in the right place. Absolutely. And wanting this to grow, that you're going to need to steer that ship. You'll need to be the captain.
Look, I'm fiercely ambitious. I always have been. And ambitious is not, you know, it's got nothing to do with money. It's how do you take something that you've grown from your garage and turn it into the best possible thing that you can, so that you leave the most outstanding legacy. So for me, a legacy is really important. And I have no view ever of sitting back and just... I am a workaholic. It's one of the problems. I will put my hand up and say that I have, because I love what I do. So on a Sunday, I'm thinking about the business. At midnight, I'm thinking about the business because I'm passionate about it. Yeah. And so when you go at it because you don't really care about the money, and you go at it because you really are genuinely so invested in what it is that you're doing, there is no work-life balance. That's rubbish. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, you do it because you love doing it. And so, no, I hope that I'll still be overseeing it when I'm 80.
I love that. Where do you see, obviously you've got big plans for next year, but if you cast your mind forward a little bit more futuristic, look at 10 years' time, where this platform can grow and how it can be, I guess, a part of everyday life for most people, and especially children. Yeah. Are there any big plans and big future hopes that are a little bit more at arm's reach?
Look, absolutely. I think the digital juggernaut that we're building at the moment is going to be definitely it is the next 10 years plan. So we will still continue to do face-to-face, but I think given the fact that we don't know what COVID's going to do, and if there's going to be other versions of COVID that come out in the future, we really are future-proofing the business. We've done an amazing online program with Stanford University. We have done an amazing online program with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk that's about to launch on our website. We're also just about to launch a huge partnership with Matt Stefanania. He's a very famous dance personality in the US, and he does a lot of dancing, you know, to kind of work through trauma, and he's got over 17 million followers on YouTube, and so he's built up this incredible. So we're doing a dance academy, global dance academy, that we're offering at Beautiful Minds with him. Good. So that launches in about 2 weeks' time. But moving forward, everything will be digital, and everything will be available to anyone, anywhere, no matter what their circumstances are, because that's the biggest thing that I have as a stopping point for people getting to our physical workshops, is that we get countless emails every single week from Sweden and South Africa and London, and they just, you know, they can't attend. So for me, that's going to be Beautiful Minds will completely evolve into this digital world.
Can I ask, was that digital platform that you're building, was that a COVID innovation, or was that pre-COVID?
No, that was pre-COVID, yeah. So we actually, it's not part of the Beautiful Minds website. It's a separate platform that's launching. That we started building in September last year, and then we just had some really amazing opportunities come through in the last couple of months that have allowed us to do it. It's all been self-funded. I think if we look at taking it really big, we probably will look for the right investor to sort of step in with us and just help us take it to that next level. But we've got the most extraordinary people on our team. You know, we've got, just if you look at the Beautiful Minds team now, there's nothing that we can't achieve with the minds and the tools that we've got at our fingertips to do some great things.
Outside of the professionals in the US, is the team very Sydney based?
It's all over Australia, actually. So when we sort of divide up the 85 presenters that work for us, they're Queensland, Adelaide, Canberra, Victoria, pretty much everywhere. WA we haven't hit yet, just because it's been quite a thing. We were meant to launch in WA this year, but obviously with COVID that's been quite a challenge.
Yeah.
But for me, the drive is, we do 170 face-to-face workshops a year. That's enormous. For me, that the focus is keeping that going, because we know the quality is amazing, but then it's digital moving forward.
I love that.
Yeah.
Outside of business and outside of all of this, I know you'd have very limited time, but as a human being, to give everyone an idea of who you are and who the face behind the business actually is, give us a little bit of an insight into your life. What are the daily rituals, the things you love to do? Yeah.
So I'm obsessed with my garden. And I think, one of the things that I love to do first thing in the morning is I walk out here at about, we get up really early. So we get up at about 5 in the morning.
Same as me.
Do you?
Yeah, early bird, 4:45 every day.
Best thing, yeah.
Best thing.
Isn't it? The
whole world. You just feel like you've beaten the day.
You do feel like you've beaten the day. And it's just so still. There's just something quite magic about it. So normally make a cup of herbal tea, head out into the garden, and I just sit and I'm just still. We've got a beautiful 6-month-old kitten called Inti, who would normally be running around here. I think she's hiding. So I love spending time with animals. Brendan and I walk a lot as well. It's beautiful. We've got water just on our doorstep, so we get to go down to the beach quite a lot, which is just really peaceful. Love having friends over. We both are mad about being in the kitchen and cooking. And it's been unfortunate this year. I haven't been able to get up and see my family. They're in Queensland, which has been really, really hard. For someone who normally sees her parents every single month, I think that's been... a lot of people have had a lot worse than I have, but I've really missed seeing them face to face. But then in terms of, what I enjoy doing, I think for me, when I'm off, I have one day or half a day of every single week where I'll just take as complete downtime. And I just love to read. I keep it pretty simple.
I was going to say, you take me as someone who reads a lot. You're very well spoken. Yeah. Obviously very intelligent. Is there a book? And I'll admit, I'm not much of a reader. I tried, but I'm such a listener. And I think it's because I need to work on not being as stimulated all the time. And sitting and relaxing and just not looking at my phone. But is there a book that you think is almost, I guess, life-changing or in some way, shape or form super motivating and will drive someone into a great headspace? Or just something you really enjoy reading? It's one of those ones that you go back to all the time when you feel like you need that little up. Yeah,
look, there's so many. There's so many. I think I went on a spiritual journey from probably about the age of 16. And the very first book that my mum bought me was Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life. And I think that I revert back to that quite a lot because I think that it is about taking the power back with you. When you're talking about physically what is unsettled in your body at the moment, what do you need to work on? And so I think as human beings, we disconnect our body a lot from what's going on. So we sort of say, we're sick, we've got this going on, we're just going to go to a doctor and get a pill. Well, it's really about what are the emotions that are kind of coursing through your blood that are allowing you to feel that way. And so I think Louise Hay's work has always really resonated with me. I love The Alchemist.
I love it. That was my first one.
Was
in
it?
A long time.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Have you read that one?
I haven't, no. Can I be honest? The Alchemist was probably the trigger. So I got my mum gave me The Alchemist. I kept hearing people talk about it. It was Kobe Bryant's favourite book. There were so many people talking about this book. I remember saying to my mum, who enjoys reading, I said, Mum, have you ever heard The Alchemist? And she said, I got a copy. And I was in hospital at the time. It was last year when I had a really shifting 2 weeks of my life. Probably the 2 most defining weeks of my life in a long time. where I started to really sit down and assess my situation, what I wanted to do to change and really drive towards happiness and give purpose, create purpose as my North Star. And she gave me that book and I didn't read it. And it wasn't until about January I picked that book up. It was sitting in my cupboard the whole time at home. I still hadn't given it back to her. Sitting in my cupboard, and I picked it up, and I was starting work at like 7 a.m, and I just felt, as we were talking about before, driven to succeed, but I guess not happy, not purposeful. And I used to go and I used to start working at 7 a.m, but I'd get there 15 minutes before at the cafe I used to work from, and I'd sit and I'd read this book for like 15, 20 minutes. And I reckon it was the trigger to quit my job. I sat there after book. And I thought, I need to do something about my situation now or I never will. And I love that book. I pick that up and read that any day. And I've recommended it to so many people. So
the other book that I love, which is not just because I'm not plugging him because we work with him, but Dr. Bessel van der Kolk has written it's New York Times #1 book for forever, called The Body Keeps the Score. And last week Oprah did a post about World Mental Health Day, and she chose her favorite book when it came to dealing with trauma, and it was his book.
Wow.
And it's an exceptional book which just talks about how if you don't heal trauma, how it makes you unwell, physically unwell. And I think as human beings, it's a book that every single one of us should read, because we've all gone through trauma in some shape or form. We're all dealing with something every single day. I think as someone who's struggled with anxiety, it never completely goes. You will always find that if you don't eat well, sleep well, drink enough water, do all the things you should be doing, it's going to push on that again, right?
Yeah.
So that's also another book that I love. But no, I do. I read a lot all the time.
Definitely something I've got to do more of. I want to finish on two things. The first thing, and I think the most important thing of this whole podcast, is if we've got a kid sitting at home right now listening to this, or a parent, or someone who just wants to be involved, whether that be from attending a workshop or being involved in some sort of program with you guys, or maybe even someone that just wants to get in touch to maybe work with you, because you seem like that kind of character that I can imagine people are throwing resumes at you all the time. How are they going to do that?
Best thing is to go to our website, beautifulminds.com.au, and it's so much nicer to look at the website on a desktop, because it's such a big, bold, beautiful website, and you can see the full scale of who we are and what we do.
And we'll put that link in the bio of the show.
Awesome.
The last thing, just some words. I like to ask some of my wiser guests for some words of wisdom for the listeners. Just maybe something you remind yourself of all the time when you feel a little bit lost or off path.
I think just be kinder to yourself. I think people expect that everything's going to happen overnight. I think we expect it as human beings that we should be happy and peaceful every single day. And there are days where it's just not possible. And just be nicer to yourself. We're so good and supportive of our friends and people around us that we love, but we never give ourselves that same advice and that same respect. And I think if we can talk to ourselves a bit more like a best friend and start to curb that inner bully, we would have greater results, because we really are able to tap into the best parts of who we are. And allow yourself the opportunity every single day to just find moments about who you are as a human being that you're proud of, and things that you really want to kind of shine a light on. And that would be my greatest reminder to everyone.
You are doing an incredible job. I love what you're doing. I love what you've built at Beautiful Minds. I will be following the journey, and I'm sure I'm going to look back on this podcast one day and go, I can't believe I had Marina on the show before everything went global and crazy.
You can talk to me again then.
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's
I think
been a
this
joy.
is something I really wanted to get out to the world, so I'm very appreciative.
Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure.